to those of you meeting us for the first time, welcome to the Diamond Report, here to cover Whitman Blues baseball in the spring of 2026. So we are excited and happy to help launch this new project alongside John Barry, Director of Sport Communications, here for Whitman Athletics, and really have a sense to really take the opportunity to use an expertise and a knowledge and a background in order to dive in and explore Whitman baseball, not only on the field, but off the field as well. My name is Stephen Gall. I am the Director of Events and Facilities for the Athletic Department, but also the voice of the Blues for the last several years. I think, gosh, probably about the last 5-6 years?
Ever since I can
Something
remember
like
you
that,
being here.
maybe even longer. Days and times run together, but it's been a fun adventure. I've enjoyed getting to meet so many of the Whitman baseball followers, both here and afar, parents and everybody else, and so it's a fun opportunity for us to expand on that. And so Cody has been joining me in the booth for the last several years. So Cody, a little bit about you.
Yeah, my name is Cody Miller. I've been working behind the scenes with Whitman baseball, I believe, since we were coming back from our COVID year in 2020. Been doing stats and some other things, but Stephen was kind enough to let me then join the on-air production. I believe I've been in the booth with you for at least 3 years now, going into year 4. So when I'm not doing stuff for Whitman, I'm the general manager of the Wall Suites baseball team here in town. I've been that since 2019, been with the Suite since 2017. So, you know, you're saying days, months, and years run together. It is so true for me too, because I'm approaching year 10 in being with the team and the organization there. So, but yeah, happy to talk about the Blues, the baseball season, and see kind of what's on tap for the 2026 season.
Yeah, and I know you got to Walla Walla about the same time that I got to Whitman. It was that 2017 year. So we're both kind of operating on similar time frames. Have had a chance to really see this. Not only this place, I mean, we can literally talk about this place in terms of sitting here in the Edwards Moore Clubhouse on the property here at Borleski Stadium. We've got the ball field just behind us to our backs, and we're excited to be talking about baseball. And the weather has cooperated so far here in the spring. I do that apprehensively because who knows how long that'll hold on to us. We're very familiar with what the weather likes to do around here.
Was talking with John Barry as we were coming into the clubhouse today about the nice weather. Very uncommon for early February, but truly we could go out and play a doubleheader if we wanted to today. So it must mean that the season's right around the corner, and you know I believe we're less than 3 weeks away from their first on-field action, and then a month away from that first home game. Yeah,
we're rapidly approaching. Is the team will hit the road and be taking on Warner Pacific this weekend in the Portland area. So it's no better time than the present for us to be able to dive in and really start talking about the 2026 Whitman baseball season. So before we can do that, we want to take the quick time machine back into 2025 and have an opportunity to really kind of look at the 2025 season on the whole. Overall, Cody, I mean, sort of top of the list, was there anything that jumped out at you in remembering back to 2025?
I mean, the first thing I think that stands out was the emergence of some new offensive forces on the Whitman baseball team, most notably one of those being Halen Ott, who had a breakout campaign last year, led the team in a lot of offensive categories, including home runs, RBIs, led the Northwest Conference in a lot of those categories as well, and just seeing him come out from his first year, stepping into his sophomore year, and just having the jump that he did to help boost a very veteran lineup is what stood out. And the offense really did a lot of the heavy lifting early on in the season to get the Blues started early. So I think that's one of the big things that started off, or that I remember from last year, you know, and to see like how the offense as a whole just really, you know, came to play every day and really gave the Blues an opportunity to win in basically every game they were in.
It did. And, you know, so we're coming off just, you know, so 2 years ago, Whitman wins the conference for the first time in terms of regular season. We were here hosting, didn't quite end the way expected to. So entering 2025, the big story was going to be replacing the pitching, right? And so, but the offense was sort of expected to be that continuity piece. And I think that for the most part, the team delivered on that last year. And, you know, maybe some of the spots where the letdowns occurred were where you sort of expected them to be, but it was in a conference, and this will be a theme that we sort of hit on time and time again, having now seen as much Northwest Conference baseball as we've had over the last several years, is that this conference the depth of it, top to bottom, doesn't get enough credit, I think, across Division III. Certainly when you talk about the region just alone, when you're also talking about the schools in the SCIAC, there is really good baseball being played west of the Mississippi at the Division III level. And so this conference last year, in 2025, Pacific winning the regular season, going on to win the conference, was 16-8 in conference. Whitman, on the outside of looking in, was in a tie for fifth at 12-12. So the difference between first and sixth was a matter of 4 games, and that has rang pretty largely true over the years. 2024, Whitman won the conference at 16-8. You look at Linfield, finished in 5th place that year, 12-12, 5th in the conference. You just firmly find it to where the difference between being in the Northwest Conference tournament, heading in, trying to make your attempt to qualify for the postseason, and being on the outside looking in is a bad game over 4 weeks. And that's the difference when we're talking about this in the grand scheme of things. And certainly we've seen it happen in a good way. We've seen it happen in a bad way. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see how that sort of shakes out in 26 as well.
And it's just basically become that 16 is almost like that magical number to not only secure a spot in those Final Four, but have a good chance at winning the conference outright and having to host. So we'll be definitely keeping an eye on that. We try to update weekly on the broadcast, like what the going-ons in the Northwest Conference is in other markets, and we seem to always enter that final week of, anyone between spots 2 and 8 could still get a spot in, depending on how the weekend goes. And just the way things have shaped out, I don't anticipate that being any different going into this year.
No, I don't either. And so kind of putting that, wrapping the bow, so to speak, on 2025, at least preliminary. So all in all, there ended up being 8 players that were nominated for Northwest Conference All-Team. You had Beck McGuire, Halen Ott, and Russell Peterson, or first-team All-Selections. So 2 of those 3 are back again in 2026. And Halen offensively and Russ on the mound. We'll spend a lot of time talking about Russell, in terms of just over the course of the entire season, expecting him to be getting the ball every single weekend in terms of starting one of the games on the weekend. And then certainly, again, Halen, expect him to be a mainstay in the middle of that lineup. Just the power is very real. And in this day and age, when you talk about, barrel rate, hard hit percentage, exit velocities, and Halen is sort of the one that I think over the course of the last couple of years, alongside, there's been some big boppers on some of these teams that we'll get some time to talk about. But Halen stands out in terms of what, him and Big Sam, I think, are the 2 that we kind of, we talk about exit velocities of the ball really jumping off the bat. They kind of stick out there. But so it was Beck, Halen, and Russ on first team. AJ Romero, Nate Petz, who we'll spend some time talking about. Brandon Ting, Tristan, TJ Buring, and Wyatt Adams were all honorable mention selections a year ago. And for a team that finished 5th, tied for 5th place in the Northwest Conference, the top 4 teams qualify for the Northwest Conference tournament is how we do it here in the Northwest Conference in New Whitman. And so they were unfortunately just on the outside looking in a year ago, but certainly set sights high heading into 26.
Well, and you were talking about going from 24 to 25, it was going to be replacing the pitching. Now almost it's reversed back to this year. Now we're replacing the offense. You take a look at just the top contributors last year offensively, you start going down the list. Brandon Ting, no longer here, graduated senior. Jack Bickerton, we will get to him in a little bit, but he is no longer on the playing field, graduating senior. You do return Halen Ott, like we said. Nate Corahayas, very high utility guy, skill guy, speed on the base pass, graduated, no longer here. Beck McGuire, you mentioned, a first-team All-West Conference, Northwest Conference, graduate senior. So right there's 4 big names that you have to turn around and replace defensively and offensively. And, it's going to be really interesting to see. Even if you go further down the list a little bit, seniority there. AJ Romero, was doing a lot of the catching. That's another one that you got to look to replace. And so there's definitely some pieces that we saw at the tail end of last year that came on and contributed towards the middle, late half end of the season. So we're expecting those. But where do you then look to replace, your left fielder? We can go and look at TJ Buring, who will more than likely move from right field to center field and probably be in that top third of the lineup every day. But, then you go look at the shortstop, who is replacing Beck McGuire. And then we go back to Jack Bickerton, who was either at first base or third base. The corner infield all of a sudden needs redone. So a lot to replace offensively, both in the field and at the plate. And it'll just be interesting to see who those newcomers and who those fresh new faces will be come opening day.
And so as we talk about fresh new faces, that'll be another component to this that will be a lot of new fresh faces that'll be getting some appearance. And that not only includes in terms of players getting everyday playing time, but that also lends itself to a conversation about the coaching staff. Heading into 2026, at the conclusion of 2025, the Whitman Blues coaching staff of head coach Brian Kitamura was assisted by Colby Waterlow and Jordan Hara. Heading into the 2026 season, we've got brand new assistants here working with this Whitman baseball program. As Colby Waterlow, shout out to Colby, he is now the head coach at Walla Walla Community College, so he is still in town, still get to see him every now and then. He's just over in a different part of town and coaching the Warriors down the road, and so we're super excited and super happy for Colby as he has moved on and now taking a head job. And then Jordan, it was just actually announced in January, was going to end up leaving the program as he is now down heading to spring training in Florida as he's taking a job working with the St. Louis Cardinals. So super, super excited for both of those guys. Like, you won't find me saying anything bad about Colby or Jordan. Just good dudes, know the game, love the game. So we're super excited for them. But certainly going to be some big shoes to fill. Both of those guys have been around for a while now.
Well, I believe Colby was finishing his fourth year at Whitman after last year, and to go in a little bit to my background with the Sweets, Colby was our summer league manager for the team last year. Did a phenomenal job for us, and I echo what Steven said. Just a great human being overall, great coach. Knows what he's doing. Can really get a team energized. Is always thinking about the next play, the next step, and the people he was able to put around him for the summer, as well as the players he was able to bring in. The future is bright for him in his coaching career, and we're excited to see what he does at the CC. And you mentioned Jordan Hara. That was one that I think was probably caught a little bit everyone off guard a little bit more. I believe he was only with the program for a year or two before he stepped, but he's now with the St. Louis Cardinals organization in Major League Baseball. So that was another thing we were talking about before we started the podcast. Is like it's that bittersweet moment where it's like you're so happy for the guys going on to the next level and pursuing that dream of is it a head coaching gig at the D1 level, or is it getting into Major League Baseball, or even at the CC level for your first major coaching gig? You're super happy about that. But then if you're Coach Kitamura, you have to turn around and within the span of 2 months have to replace two places on your staff. That is not easy to do in a short amount of time. So but I think in who Brian was able to bring on, I think the team should be very happy about who was able to bring in. And we mentioned one of them before as kind of a little bit of a caveat, but I think one of the fans will recognize one of the faces returning this year.
They will indeed. So Jack Bickerton, who just graduated this past spring, was a member of that Whitman baseball team that we've been talking about, playing first base, third base, starting pretty much every day over the last several years. Was an all-conference selection a year ago, is back. But so he will be back with the Blues and serving as a coach, and have an opportunity to hopefully talk to Jack here and have him join us at a different point as we move through kind of this project for us and what we're working through. But man, it's fun to have Bick back on campus and just around and seeing the other side of stuff. It's always a fine line, I think, for some of these athletes that they graduate and they get right into helping coach the teams that they were just on. There's a lot of responsibility in terms of that transition. There's the transition of being out of school, but still being friends with a lot of players on the team. So there's a lot of unique components, and so it does require a level of maturity, I think, in order to be able to take on that sort of role. But Bick is such a good kid. I think he's going to handle it great.
No, and I'm looking forward to it too. And just like you said, the familiarity with the program, the coaching staff, some of the players even. But that is the next big challenge is being able to separate the playing side of it and now focusing more on the coaching side. But I think what you can bring if you're Jack Bickerton is you can relate to these guys right off the bat, where it's like, hey, I know those long practices late into the night where it's getting dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I know about clearing the snow off the infield just so that we can get some on-field practice in January. I understand all these things, but look at what we're trying to build on, what we're trying to build towards, once we start up here in a couple weeks, and then once we hit March and April, we're trying to build and get better every day. And I think if he's able to focus things on like that and relate to these players, I think that's going to go a long way, not only helping him grow as a coach, but also help this team grow, replacing some of those key guys that we talked about.
He's certainly going to be tasked with a lot. There's a lot that he's jumping into this year, and then right alongside him, hired to come be a baseball coach here at Whitman for the spring of 2026, and hopefully for at least a couple years after that, is Anthony Chavez. So Anthony joining the program, was previously at Sul Ross State University down in Texas, was also a student athlete, played college baseball himself, and spent some time in the Northwest playing in the West Coast League. So playing in the league that the Walla Walla Sweets are in. So Anthony is familiar with the Pacific Northwest, and so he's been on campus since early January, so a little over a month now, and especially with Colby and Jordan both taking off, Anthony's had to jump head first in and has done a great job. Just an outstanding human. Really enjoyed getting to talk and meet with Anthony so far. Again, and hope to have an opportunity to have him come and join us in a future episode as well. But so we're certainly excited to see what the future holds. But new faces, and it goes above and beyond even sometimes the obvious, right? In terms of what you're teaching on the field and those pieces. It's how do you run practice? It's the little responsibilities of uniforms and who's in charge of what. There will be responsibility shifting that these guys are working through. So Brian and have an opportunity in a little bit. We caught up with, or I had a chance to catch up with head coach Brian Kitamura for a wide-ranging conversation. So hopefully everyone will have an opportunity to enjoy that a little bit here in a little while. But I had a large, just wide-ranging conversation with Brian, and that was one of the conversations is Brian is now going to be back with the pitching staff. So he did that for a while in a period where Tommy Richards, Nolan Parks were assistant coaches here. So Brian was working with the pitching. When Colby came in, Colby having a background with pitching, that was a piece that Colby had taken over, and he's been working with the pitchers for the last 4 years. And then now with Colby's departure and sort of an understanding in, the candidates that applied as an assistant coach and where their strengths were, that decision sort of got made that Brian was going to work back with pitchers again. So a little bit of transition all over the place, and so it'll be just different for, I think, everybody involved.
No, it's sometimes change can be good as well. Bringing, and then also seeing how the new personalities mesh in the dugout and the clubhouse as well. And I'm sure with Anthony being on campus a little bit more in the off season to kind of help with off season, prep, practice, all that good stuff. I think has been good as well. And like you said, the pregame routine changes. Who's coaching what has changed a little bit, but maybe shaking things up a little bit on that end too. We'll see how that plays into everything. And like we said, the offense is going to need the most in terms of figuring out who's going to be playing what roles, who's going to be able to step up and contribute. Yeah. Whereas now you can, not worry as much about the pitching. And I say that mostly just coming off of where they were coming out of the 24 season into the 25. But, to go back to the offense, we mentioned earlier, there are some young guys that we got a chance to look at a little bit last year that we expect to be everyday contributors now. And, it's going to be them taking on that next step and be able to provide some production to help, the Halen Otts of the world and the TJ Burings, who we expect a big leap from this year as well. So be curious to see, where does a guy like a Nate Petz fit in that came on and really kind of locked down your second base, when the time April hit till the end of the season. We talked a little bit, we mentioned TJ already as well, but we also saw Wyatt Miyamoto, get some ABs as well. Where does he fit in? We saw the jump a little bit from Sam Miskowski lapping as well. We saw the raw power there, not only on balls that left the field in fair territory, but foul territory as well. Seeing how how are those players taking that next step and growing, becoming everyday contributors to where they can be relied on once you get into Northwest Conference play?
And without stepping all over my conversation with Coach Kittamura either, one of the pieces that we did spend a little bit of time talking about and that Brian addressed was a couple of the names that you mentioned, because ironically enough, so we saw when it came to the backstop, right? So the catcher position, by and large, most of those innings and at bats were filled by AJ Romero. And AJ, as a senior, did an outstanding job, was honorable mention all conference, but he caught a lot of innings, especially last year, but over the last couple of years. That wasn't necessarily the plan heading into 2025. We mentioned Wyatt Miyamoto. Wyatt got hurt towards the beginning of last year, so we didn't see much of him. Obviously, we saw, just as a result of circumstances, Halen ended up playing more first base because, again, you just trying to fit bats in the lineup and where do pieces fit. Nate Petz's natural position is catcher. Wyatt Miyamoto is a catcher. Halen Ott is a catcher. Sam Miskowski-Lapping's natural position is a catcher. And sort of the way that we sort of see how 2026 is going to unfold, at least to some certain extent, is going to depend on who ends up catching in a particular game. If Miskowski-Lapping is behind the plate, maybe you see Halen at DH or first base, and then depending on that, you might see someone else. If Petz is behind the plate, then who plays second base is going to change. Who plays the third is going to change. If you have Halen behind the dish, then maybe Sam is DHing that. So I think you're going to see a lot of the lineup is going to sort of start with who's catching and sort of start to fill itself out from there, because not only do they have, from what Coach Kittamura is saying, is 4 catchers that they trust behind the dish on any given day, but then all 4 of them play another position. So depending on where they're playing, then maybe where they're then playing elsewhere in the field, what spot they're taking up in the lineup, I think you're going to see a lot sort of unravel based on that from a day-to-day perspective.
It's going to be such a different look. I mean, just from the lineup structure alone, I think you and I are very familiar with getting lineups for that Saturday doubleheader, and we could probably name the first 6 bats in the lineup in order without problem. We might be lucky for the first 2 if what we're looking at in terms of just a roster, rebuilding, not a reconstruction per se, looks like. So it'll be very interesting to see once it comes opening day down in California, and some exhibition games as well. But on the other side of it, we talked a little bit about it, pitching wise. You're kind of getting a little bit back this year that is, you're hoping is going to carry you through the first month or so while the lineup gets itself figured out.
Yep, we sure are. And you know what, Cody, I want to continue this conversation. I also don't want to step on any of my conversation with Brian anymore. So let's take a quick moment. Let's toss it to my conversation that I had with Whitman head coach Brian Kittamura, all-ranging conversation talking about his life as a Whitman student and student athlete, to staying on staff, to now having been at Whitman for nearly 16 years plus since graduating, and sort of the way that the program has evolved, and talked a little bit about heading into this upcoming season where the expectations are. So enjoy this conversation with Whitman head coach Brian Kittamura. All right. So good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Dugout Talk. We're going to venture off the field and talk Whitman baseball with Whitman baseball, getting to talk about the game and a little bit of everything else. So our guest today is no stranger to Whitman baseball. He arrived on campus as a first year in 2006 and has never left, graduating as a member of the Whitman baseball team in 2010 and immediately joining the baseball staff. He's helmed arguably one of the most successful eras of Whitman baseball since Borleski himself, highlighted with the team's first ever trip to the NCAA tournament in 2019 and winning the conference for the first time since 1952 in 2024. He's amassed 186 career wins while at the helm of the Whitman baseball program, and the team has their sights set even higher here in 2026. So please welcome Whitman baseball head coach Brian Kittamura. BK, appreciate you joining us here on our maiden voyage and figuring out what this is end up going to be. How you doing this morning?
Great, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you joining us. And I give your background here, sort of to set the table for everyone, because we want to kind of get into the state of the team today, certainly talking about 26 in a minute, but I want a chance to talk with you a little bit too, sort of, do a little bit origin story. I think everyone's obviously, you're kind of the synonymous name here with Whitman baseball, especially in the last, 10, 15, 20 years now, Brian, but And so what? Let's talk a little bit about you though. How did you end up at Whitman? What got you here?
Well, first, I appreciate that, and we've always been very fortunate to have great kids in our program, great young men, great student athletes. So it's been a great ride. This is year 20 for me here on campus, including my days as a student athlete. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to attend Whitman, and found that Whitman was the best fit to not just pursue playing baseball at the college level, but also pursue an outstanding education at the same time, and not be too far away from home as well. So that's really what drove me to Whitman, and being on campus in terms of visiting campus during one of the visitors' days. Really gave me a great sense as to the tight-knit community here, the people first, student first mentality that Whitman has always had, and the ability for students to really invest in their education and what they're passionate about. So was very fortunate to land here and then had the opportunity to continue to stay on in a coaching capacity as a volunteer for 3 years. During that time, I worked in education and got to see K through 12 and also the college level a little bit in terms of disability services, and working with different groups of students out at Walla Community College, which was a great experience. And a lot of that was also very formative in terms of helping to establish a teaching background and a lot of the philosophies that I try to incorporate into our program today. So feel very fortunate to have had the opportunities, and have loved my time here at Whitman, especially with our baseball program.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we- again, kind of wanting to really dive. We're going to dive into BK the player for a minute. So like
I don't know if we
for
want to do this.
no, I think we do. Come on now, BK. You gotta, we'll shine a little glory for you. So Brian, the head coach, evaluating Brian, the player. So what kind of player was Brian Kitamura? Like what were you good at? What was BK the student athlete entering college in 06?
Couldn't hit. Couldn't hit. Uh, yeah, well, so was definitely lucky to have the opportunity to play early in my career. That was something that was very eye-opening, in good and bad ways. It really forced me to compete at a high level, but also shine light on what I really need to improve upon. And so that really shifted my focus in terms of how to allocate training time as best possible, and how to do that was probably the biggest challenge that I had as a student athlete. How to make certain adjustments, especially in an era where we didn't have technology. Those were all things that if I put my coaching hat on, like I would have loved to have access to technology, some of the things that we do today with TrackMan and Blast Motion, to try to make sure that, you know, time to contact, connection, swing plane were more consistent, and to try to pair that with an approach. So those are things that we do with our players on a very regular basis, and a test retest scenario throughout the fall and then also throughout courses of the spring. Um, but would have loved to have that opportunity, not just for myself, but for our program. I feel like that would have given the players in our program at that time a, a great opportunity to really elevate our games based off of what we already did really well. Um, Definitely took a lot of pride in my defense. I'd say that was probably my strong suit. And then just doing everything that we could, right, to put the team first. Was very fortunate to play, for Casey Powell here for my first 3 years. And he was just a great person to play for throughout, my time here. And so, that was something too that there was no doubt that the team always came first, and that was a big part of it, no matter what the results were on the field.
It's awesome. And then, so obviously you're also a student here. So, any sort of memories of, just time on campus, or, the balancing act of being a student and an athlete that sort of, stick out, or, are the ones, you got a favorite story you like to tell at alumni dinners, that kind of stuff?
For sure. Well, I'll share that baseball is a huge passion of mine, and so getting to tie that into academics was pretty cool. I was a psychology major here at Whitman, and my advisor, who is actually still on campus as a professor in the psychology department, Professor Herbranson. Wally's outstanding. He's actually served as the chair of the psychology department, I believe, 2 times now. He's served as our faculty athletic representative.
Mhm.
He's been very involved. And I actually had a chance to do an independent study with him on the psychology of Joe Mauer during
Oh,
my
cool.
senior year when Joe Mauer was being moved from being a primary catcher to first baseman to try to extend his career. And we had some pretty in-depth discussions as to the different impacts, not just health-wise and longevity-wise for a career, but how that might play into offensive statistics
Yeah.
as different sabermetrics were starting to kind of become more mainstream, and whether or not that would play into potential contract renewal or not. And so that was really interesting to talk about from a psychology perspective, to think about how the team's still winning games, you're a professional athlete from the outside looking in, do all these new metrics and a position shift impact how someone goes about what they do day to day and their involvement in the game, especially moving from behind the plate when you're involved in arguably every play, right, of the game, to first base where you're still involved in a very high clip, especially with putouts. And potential assists in the infield, but it's not quite the same, in terms of the pitch to pitch engagement. So that's a great memory that I have, just having that opportunity to pair what I was doing as a student athlete uh, in baseball and do something that was specific to the sport that I was playing in an academic setting.
Yeah.
It I'm not sure if that opportunity presents itself, very commonly in other academic settings. And so I feel very, again, very fortunate to have had that opportunity. And the other thing I'll say too is I think I've I've benefited from having been a student here at Whitman in understanding a little bit more in detail what our players are going through on a daily basis,
Mhm.
uh, in terms of trying to balance, what we're asking of them and what they're already asking of themselves during certain times of the year, especially. And so we're pretty intentional in trying to scale certain things with what we do at practice during heightened times in the academic calendar, where we know guys might be in midterms. We know that guys might have certain projects or portfolios due. That's all part of the rhythm of it that I think our coaching staff is really cognizant about and trying to make sure that we're able to put guys in the best position to be successful without just sticking to a plan to stick to a plan. And quite frankly, like without the perspective of having been here at Whitman, I'm not sure how easy that would be, for me to help direct our program in that manner. So feel very fortunate for that as well too.
And so, obviously the understanding of Whitman and sort of the ask of being a Whitman student athlete and carrying the academic responsibilities is a huge part of it.
Mhm.
From what I've seen in the last, 10 years in terms of trying to improve student athlete experience and make things more comfortable. Do you ever at times sit here, I mean, you're sitting in the clubhouse right now too, just kind of going, so you're like, you guys have it so much better than I do.
It's pretty incredible, and we've had great support, incredible support from so many people. Extremely thankful for our lead donors for this project, the clubhouse, the Edwards Moore Clubhouse, to our indoor hitting and pitching facility that was constructed in 2016. That was the first capital project that I had the opportunity to work on in partnership with our administration after becoming the head coach here. It's vastly changed, and it's changed pretty rapidly. 15, 16 years is a long time, but that's in the same breath, that's also a very short amount of time sometimes to get certain things done. And so, yeah, sometimes there are days where, I'll remind guys what the landscape looked like here, especially at Borleski Stadium as a historic ballpark, and Tim Duncan and Peter Fowler do a great job with the stadium here. But it looked vastly different, until my senior year in 2010. We didn't even have dugouts here at
Oh
Borleski.
man.
We just had benches behind the fence. So those
Wow.
are things that like the actual physical structure of what Borleski Stadium looks like today is completely different than it was 15 to 20 years ago. And I think that's hopefully a sense of pride in terms of, what everyone who's come through our program before has helped to build to inspire the next generation. And really the opportunity then to have these projects come to fruition so that we can leave the program in a better place for everyone who comes after us. So the legacy that our players leave, I think, is something that is becoming more and more profound in terms of our current players understanding that, given what they have access to currently.
Do you have something that you pull from, just like if, and because there you hit those moments, right, where you have to hit these ports and just like, guys, come on, like you guys have it so much better than you realize. Like, do you have one of those like things you went through that you pull out of like, we had to do this and this instead of what you guys have? Like, do you just have a quick one that you like to pull out sometimes?
Yeah, even this year is a great example. This is the first year we haven't done the sod pull at Borleski Stadium.
Oh
Now,
yeah, yep.
personally, like I think this is a great team building day. Wall Wall High School used to have host their home games here at Borleski Stadium. Pretty nostalgic with this being the hometown of Drew Bledsoe and many other high caliber, college and professional football athletes who've walked through the gates to play football here. And obviously, Coach Borleski was an outstanding football coach as well too throughout his time. So, I think this is something that is is definitely a shift where I am trying to find a way to replace like the grittiness of that day and
Yeah.
having our guys, help cut out 12,000 square feet of sod, right, and roll it and lift it, and the interactions with members of the school district, representatives from the city of Walla Walla, representatives from local farms and other folks in our community who would, get X number of square feet for a project, which was great. I think that's a huge part of the interaction that our players should see as a part of the Wall Wall Valley and taking pride in representing our valley. But now that the school district has passed their levy and have outstanding facilities at Wahai, football was not on Borleski for the first time this fall, so baseball only complex now, which is great for us. But that was a moment where I was like, there's no sod pull this year. We're not transitioning the field anymore. And our first years have no semblance of what that even looks like. Whereas our upperclassmen do. So in many ways, it'll help the playing surface. It definitely helps in terms of time management and taking care of the field and having the ability to be here at Borleski in the fall. Our partnership with DeSales High School was always outstanding, and we really appreciate everybody, with their generosity and their kindness of allowing us to use their field in the fall. And us trying to do as much as we can, to help prepare their facility for the spring. And we'll continue to help as much as we can. They're just over the left field fence, so they're not too far away. But that's one thing that definitely stands out is days like the sod pull day where you know there's donuts and milk and orange juice out there and everyone's going to work and the sod cutters are going. That's a good working day,
Yeah.
and definitely a little bit different that we don't have that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't even thought about that part of it. But yeah, 100% because that's one of those team bonding things that you just, everyone's in it. No one gets to slack off because they're going to hear about it. Just you hold guys accountable, you figure out culture, you do a lot of those kinds of things on those days. So yeah,
Definitely. And taking pride in your field. I mean,
absolutely.
we're getting the field ready. I think that's a big part of that day as well too. But things, now at Borleski, right, without that transition, I think there's other layers to baseball only facility that will make field maintenance hopefully a little bit easier and a little bit more streamlined in
Yeah,
terms of preparing for the upcoming spring and the summer as well.
absolutely. And you mentioned Tim and Pete earlier, but Pete sort of actually gives me an opportunity to transition as we start talking a little bit about this year. Is Pete's your only veteran coming back on the coaching staff. So, it's a busy off season in terms of both of your primary assistants. gone on to other positions. Colby Waddalow was pitching coach last year. He's now the head coach here, still in town at Walla Walla Community College. And no,
Mhm.
super psyched for him. I'll let you get to talk about that in a second too. And then Jordan Hara moving on in just in January, getting an opportunity to go and join the St. Louis Cardinals and heading down to Florida to go be part of spring training. And so that's shaken up a little bit of maybe what you've done this offseason and in particular, because really most of that's even transpired sort of just in the last couple of months. So talk a little bit about
Really
what
has.
that process has been and bringing on new coaches and sort of what you've been doing on that front.
For sure. Well, we've had a lot of transition, no doubt. And I'll start by saying we've always had great coaches on our staff and been very, very fortunate to have great coaches on our staff to work with our student athletes. Colby's tremendous coach, and really earned the opportunity to lead the program at Wall Wall CC, having grown up here, in the latter part of his high school career, and gone to Wall High and even mixed into the Wall Wall CC practices, when he could. Before he had his playing career at the college level. I know that, having the opportunity to lead the program, not to speak for him, but that's something that is a great opportunity for him as he elevates his coaching career. And then also great for us to have a partner, across town
Yeah.
to collaborate with and to work with in terms of, baseball in the Wall Wall Valley and anything that we can do to help. Um, Local baseball, especially at the middle school and high school level, right? Whether that's hosting tournaments, providing more opportunities for training, providing more accessible opportunities for players who might want to dive into the finer aspects of the game or learn about the recruiting process. And Colby's going to be outstanding at that. So I know he's already off to a great start at the CC. We've already been in contact throughout this week about next year and some things on the docket that hopefully we can put on the schedule. So extremely proud of him, and it makes me feel old. I'm not gonna lie, 'cause I coached Colby in summer ball
Oh
back in the day.
man,
So
that's funny.
he's doing great. Yeah, and it's really fun to see how he's gonna, take that program on a very upward trajectory with everything that he's already doing with them. So um, yeah, outstanding to have Colby at the CC, for their program and for our community. And then Jordan, Jordan, outstanding coach, outstanding person. The opportunity with the Cardinals is something that is definitely earned. Like the Cardinals reached out and it's a no-brainer. It's a slam dunk, and so obviously challenging for us, to have that position open right before the new year, essentially. But at the same time, with the pro hiring cycle and spring training just about to start up here in the next week with pitchers and catchers reporting, um, incredible opportunity for Coach Hara, for Jordan to be down in Florida in Jupiter at the new Cardinals complex, working with the Florida Complex League team as their hitting coach, and then I'm sure, being there at the facility, right, you'll have a lot of crossover with any of the players who come down after the draft. Um, his trajectory is tremendous as well too. So it's gonna be great to see what he does with his career, and then also to see if there's anything that he shares. Right, he really built out a lot of what we do with our technology feedback in a hitting sense.
Mhm.
Um, and so, I'm sure we'll keep in touch in terms of, hey, what are you guys doing with the Cardinals, right? Is there anything new that you guys are doing and try to bring that back to our program? So
Yeah.
incredible to see what those guys are doing. Anthony Chavez and Jack Bickerton joining our staff has been great. Jumped right in. Uh, Anthony's only been here for a month and he's done a ton already. He's only been here for a month. Jack got here 2.5 weeks ago, jumped right in as well too. Obviously, with his familiarity to the program and of Whitman being a graduate, that helps a lot. And so having that continuity has been something that has helped with the transition in terms of Colby and Jordan leaving in the last 6 months. And then obviously Pete. Pete's incredible. He's an incredible person, outstanding coach, and feel very, very lucky to have known Pete for over half my life. He actually coached me in high school as well. So once he said
Yeah.
that, he was making the move out here, and offered to help out with our program, that was again a slam dunk, no brainer to have him join our staff. So yeah, he
Yeah.
is definitely a steady presence and a great mentor for all of our players, um, and just extremely thankful for all the time that he puts in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's a great deal of care there, not only from Pete, but from everybody, just, already. And, obviously Bickerton as a graduate of the program, and Anthony too. I know you've already put him through the ringer, and he's just been catching up and figuring it out as we go. So I know it's been a lot of fun, but yeah, there's it's truly been a trial by fire, I think, so far in the first 6 weeks though. But he seems to be staying on top of it and doing a good job. So it's been awesome to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's been a great part. We knew we were going to have transition. We were pretty intentional in making sure that the transition was as seamless as possible. There were definitely questions as to, how to go about the process, losing both coaches, right? From a positional standpoint, who we bring in, who we want to lead what. And a big part of it was just like at Whitman, right? Okay, how do we put the student athletes first? How do we make sure that since we're already in season and what we built in the fall, we can continue to build? We're not trying to change what we do philosophically. Like the roots of our program are established. We're going to continue to make adjustments and change as necessary, and change as we feel for the better. But Jack and Anthony and Pete have all done an incredible job of making sure that we continue to move forward, and not just move on, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
with what we do. And I think that's really benefited our players as we started the spring and these first couple weeks of practice, to continue with what they do best, and play to our strengths as we start to take the field together.
Awesome. I love it. And so, inevitably too, with sort of the change in coaching staffs, I would imagine there's some responsibilities have shifted around. And if you want to, I don't know how much you want to jump into some of that and sort of where you expect. Are you going to be
Sure.
back with pitchers again in 26?
Yes, so that shift actually happened right away in the fall.
Okay.
So once Colby left, I rejoined. Shouldn't say rejoined, but great to be back with the pitchers. And that was quite frankly, it's been great. Like something that I've really enjoyed, and up until 2020, that was the role that I was in our coaching staff, for a 3 or 4 year period there, and so. Um, Definitely some nuances, right, in terms of not being around our pitchers on a day-to-day basis as much, but getting to really establish what we do with our routines individually and with our staff philosophy, has been outstanding. And so choosing to be with the pitchers, was a part of our hiring process in terms of knowing who we would bring in to keep that continuity, throughout the course of the year. Anthony will work with our outfielders, and will coach third base for us. And then Jack is helping Pete, assisting with our infielders, and will coach first base for us this year. So
Okay.
Anthony, Jack, and Pete have done a great job, and will work primarily with our hitters on a day-to-day basis. Um, and so that's something too that we've got a pretty clear delineation of, who's going to lead what, especially as we move into the spring. Also been very intentional in our practice structure, with what we've done throughout the course of the first 2.5, 3 weeks here, being back on the field, and it's been great with the warmer weather this year that we have been able to get on the field. This early, which, as we know in the Northwest, knock on wood, sometimes is not always that easy, right? So we've been very fortunate in that regard and have structured practices, not just in a training sense, obviously to make sure that we maximize what we do for the guys on a daily basis, but to make sure that Anthony and Jack can see the guys play. I think that's one of the biggest challenges is, they haven't, from a coach's perspective for Jack and Anthony, just being here for only a month, haven't had a chance to see us play live. Um, we structured coaches meetings and transitional meetings where we're reviewing video of hitters, talking about our principles, in different aspects of the game. But there's a difference between doing that in an office and watching videos and talking about swing adjustments versus, helping a player work an approach in a certain at bat in a certain count and talking through their mentality and what they're thinking pitch to pitch. Um, and then also the speed of the game, with our personnel, watching guys run the bases. So we have tried to incorporate as much scrimmage time as possible, and have actually had Anthony and Jack coaching the bases as often as possible, which is pretty flipped from what we typically do. We
Yeah.
want our runners to be able to run with their eyes up and read the baseball and pick up the ball and make reads early so that they get comfortable with what they need to read on the field. But this year has been a little bit different with trying to get Anthony and Jack, up to speed on the bases with what we want to do in certain situations. So it's all been great. They've worked extremely hard early and put in a ton of time already. And it'll just continue to get better and better and better as we move throughout the spring.
Well, and it'll already look a little bit different because yeah, you and Pete have been the guys running out in between innings for a while now. So you're say Pete to jog to first, but Bick's gonna have to carry the Jolly Rancher bag. So
He will, yes. He definitely will.
I love it. Well, and so you're working with the pitcher, so that's a logical segue then to kind of jump in. The couple of the primary horses in terms of the mound are back. Obviously, you got some bullpen pieces you're gonna have to figure out and plug in and see where guys' roles are gonna be. What what are you seeing so far from your arms? Any newcomers? Are returning weekend arms in terms of the starters? In Russ and Ollie certainly kind of right up the top of it. What's your projection? What's your expectation for these guys heading into 26?
Well, say expectations are high. And I think a lot of that is based off of the ceiling of this group is extremely high. We know that we need to command the baseball, especially in certain counts into specific zones, in order to be successful. But there's no doubt that we have the ability and the talent to do that. How consistently we can do that will determine a lot of our success, batter to batter, inning to inning, and then how quickly we can reset, to execute the next pitch is going to be a huge key, as it is for anybody, but a huge key for us, especially as we move throughout the course of the season. And I share that, having Russ and Ollie back at the top of our rotation is huge. Those two have proven, what they can do in our conference and beyond. Extremely proud of both those guys. And Russ had an incredible summer in the Cal Ripken Collegiate League. In my opinion, a top five league in the nation for collegiate summer baseball. He actually got the ball in game one of the championship series for the big train, the Bethesda big train, and he had an outstanding summer for them. So he has continued to climb and has taken a whole nother step in terms of what he does as a pitcher, which has been extremely exciting to see. And Oliver, last year was coming off of injury, and that was the most innings that he has thrown in a long time. And so we feel like we're in a great spot with his training. He feels like he's in a great spot with his training as well too, in terms of just how his body is moving and how his arm is recovering, which is something that, quite frankly, like he's probably the healthiest he's been throughout his college career, which is really exciting. So we're excited to have both those guys at the top of the rotation. And we have the most arms that we've had in a long time here. That was really intentional. We knew that we were going to graduate a significant number of pitchers over the last 2 years, just based off our roster composition, and that we needed to make sure that we recruited effectively to bring in guys who could pitch early in their career. And then we've also supplemented that with bringing in a couple transfers, who are guys who are great fits for Whitman academically, that we were able to bring on this summer. So Jack Finn, left-handed pitcher, transfer for us, and Luke Ivanoff, right-handed pitcher, transfer for us. Expect both of those guys to play, very impactful roles throughout the spring, especially, given what they've proven that they can do, at the college level. And then we have a really good group of returners who have taken a whole nother step, which is exciting to see, especially some of the younger arms who have been on the mound for us the past year. And then I will say that our first year class our incoming arms have been extremely impressive. They've come right out of the gate and they have competed. They've attacked the zone, and they're really starting to earn opportunities, to pitch in situations where they can change the course of a game based off of what they bring to the table, which is exciting as well too. So, we're pretty dynamic on the mound, in my opinion, with our depth, which is important. And that was also a key for us in recruiting, knowing the schedule that we're going to play this year and potentially moving forward of probably more games over the course of a weekend than just three.
Mhm.
We have a 5 game swing in California this year over the course of 4 days. There's numerous weekends where we play doubleheader Saturday, doubleheader Sunday. Um, it would be hard, right, to sustain success if we only had 9 to 12 arms, right,
Yeah.
over the course of 4 games. And so
Yep.
uh, our pitchers have done an incredible job with their training. Um, you know, Jocelyn, our director of sports performance, and Coach JP has done an incredible job with our players across the board with their training throughout the off season. And the structure of what we have now is a little bit different than in years past to provide, an opportunity for training throughout the week to take more of a precedence so that we can make sure that we're prepared for whenever we need to take the ball, especially with so many pitchers and then the different days that we're going to be playing this year. So our training is very much in alignment with what we're doing. Um, uh, I'll say across the board, maybe outside of 2 or 3 guys, we've seen some great metric increases. In terms of pitch design, we had a good number of pitchers who, we built out a very specific velocity phase for them throughout the off season, and they were very diligent in their training and pairing that with their strength and conditioning as well too. And we're starting to see the fruits of the labor with that, where velocity floors are stabilizing even early in the spring. And the top end velocity numbers of what's showing up on the gun is great. And that's just one metric, but what that does is it should allow secondary pitches to play up. And it should allow for, there be more variability in terms of what we're able to do to attack different zones with different pitches and different counts. And so, when I say our pitching staff is more dynamic, that's just hats off to our guys. Like they have put themselves in a position to be able to pitch in different situations and find different ways to get hitters out without having to rely on one way to get a guy out. Which I think for us as we move throughout the season is going to be key. And then we can utilize the depth of our staff to be able to put guys in the best position to be successful with matchups throughout the course of the series, and hopefully that'll really benefit us as we move throughout the spring.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that we'll have an opportunity to dive into a pitching and metrics versus plan and technology and a lot of that at a different point. But I also, I want to get to a chance to talk to hitters, and I don't want to keep you forever for us. So, but I'm putting that as a mental note, and I'm putting that in a mental note for you. We want to follow up and maybe do that here down the line or
Absolutely.
throughout the season. So I
Well,
think it's a fascinating topic that is pitching has changed significantly in terms of what numbers you're looking at and what's relevant and what matters and plans and processes and rehab and just all of it. So I think that uh we're barely scratching the surface and maybe diving really deep into that stuff.
yeah, definitely barely scratching the surface. And like I mentioned before, the technology and the ability for players to have almost immediate feedback currently,
Yeah.
it's pretty incredible to see how that impacts their training as opposed to 20 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
so we'll have to get you on track, man.
Absolutely. Hey, absolutely. I I hope your technology can read something that slow. But we'll find out. So I was a junk baller, BK. So we'll see what we got. So that's sort of on the pitching side. Offensively, uh, obviously there's one name that everybody's going to point to in terms of what you've got coming back and in terms of Halen and just, sort of he's that anchor of the lineup that kind of sits in the middle of it and, everything sort of devolves up and down, kind of based on him sitting in the middle of it. But I also, I know what an outstanding year that TJ had last year, Nate and Jonah, and you've got returners at a bunch of spots. Obviously, you do have some bats and some power. A new left fielder is going to need to be found at some point. Moving some guys around. Cora Hayes, replacing that production and the versatility that Nate provided. How are sort of the offensive plans looking in terms of, are you expecting, or should fans be expecting to see a lot of the same names on the lineup card every day? Or are we really looking at a situation where we're going to be, especially early on, just trying and mixing and matching and kind of seeing who's playing right at the right times?
Yeah, we have a really good group of position players this year as well. We're older than we were last year in some
Sure.
regards, but we also graduated a very veteran group of position players, including Jack Bickerton, Nate
Yep.
Corhayas, Brandon Ting. You go down the list of guys who had been consistent and top end performers throughout the course of their career and who had the opportunity to play really early in their career as well. A good group of those guys graduated last year. So our lineup composition will look a lot different. We're going to be able to spread speed throughout our lineup this year, which will be key. And one thing that's unique that will probably determine a lot of our lineup decisions is that of our four catchers, all of them also play another position. So,
Wow.
it all starts with Halen Ott. Halen's an outstanding player, top player in the nation, all region player last year. He's proven that he can hit with the best of them.
Yeah.
Uh, Whether he plays first base or is behind the plate for us will help set our lineup on a day-to-day basis. Nate Petz, who we saw at second base last year, all conference second baseman, is actually a primary catcher, right? So he'll be back behind the plate this year. Wyatt Miyamoto, who played a little bit early until he unfortunately got hurt last year, so had to take a medical hardship year. He's back fully healthy. He'll play corner outfield and be behind the plate for us. And then Sam Miskowski Lapping, who's primarily DH'd and played first base for us as well, is also behind the plate. That was his primary position coming into college before
Mm.
we moved him to first base. So the unique part about this is that if all four of those guys are in the lineup at the same time, we've got to kind of figure out who's going to play where on a certain day, and that will probably determine who else is in the lineup,
Sure.
based off of corner outfield, in the infield, at first base, and then how we utilize the DH based off of who we want to be behind the plate or the options that we would have behind the plate late. So those are all things that are unique this year. So probably less set in stone in terms of AJ Romero was a stalwart for us. He
Yeah.
was a rock behind the plate, and he caught the vast majority of the innings behind the plate the past few years. Um, that will change, this
Yeah.
year, given our roster composition and AJ graduating. So a lot of it keys off of who's behind the plate for us. TJ will move from right to center as our everyday center fielder. Um, and then we're also very excited that we've added Landon Runyon as a transfer. His older brother Garrett was an outstanding player in our conference and in our program, all-time RBI leader in our program for his career. We recruited Landon out of high school. We're fortunate to have him here after he started his career at Division I level, and so excited for him to plug into the outfield as well, and expect him to play, the corners every day. So that's something too that injecting a left-handed bat like that into our lineup is big, for some right-left balance. Um, and then we have a really really good group of incoming players who all have different strengths and are able to really maximize what those strengths are. And so yeah, we're going to plug and play early. We need to make sure that we stay healthy. One of our challenges early will be, how healthy can we be? Coming out of the fall, we have a couple guys who are still in the infield needing to get healthy to play every day or have the opportunity to play every day.
Yep.
And that will help with our versatility and how much we can be dynamic with our lineup composition throughout the course of a weekend as well too. So we've got the guys, we've got a great group of guys to be able to execute 1 through 9. It'll look a little bit different than last year, but the guys who we plugged in early and some of that was out of necessity, last year based off of
Yeah.
injury and whatnot. Those guys have taken a whole nother step, which is exciting to see.
Absolutely. And I do want really quickly to just spend a little bit of time because again, when you talk about outfield especially, right? So
Mhm.
TJ moves from right to center, you know, Brandon was out in left field and playing outfield in town, playing outfield at Borleski in particular is a very interesting place to try and do so, right? Especially compared to a lot of other parks in the conference. You have the baby blue monster out in left, the Board of Education, as we like to call it up in the booth. The center field is deep. You run over 400 feet into most of center. It's big alleys. Then you have the short fence out in right center. It's a big outfield with a lot of unique characteristics to it. So, Nate was out there and, I spent a ton of time out there. Before that, Parker was out in center field. So like, can you talk really quickly, sort of like the load that TJ kind of has to shoulder in manning center field, and then also too, because you also played outfield here, the parts of playing in left, trying to be a corner outfield at Borleski, and obviously people maybe watching big leagues understand like Green Monster and stuff, but like the nuance that goes into playing outfield when you have that as sort of a backboard and where it changes positioning, where it changes, just how you set things up and how you play it, especially in a, you know, and I'm throwing, I know I'm throwing, this became a really long question and I apologize for that, but like, you
No,
also then add the left center wind tunnel, the wind blows out that way. You've got the big backboard, you got a bunch of space, like just the challenges of trying to play outfield in Borleski in particular, and maybe sort of where that's a heavier lift for guys and the trust that kind of has to go into playing outfield in Borleski.
definitely. Well, the one good thing is that all the guys who, can play left field for us, um, outside of Chris Nebrega and Danny DeMarco and Sean Nguyen are all returners. So our incoming guys, have done a great job of understanding, what the elements are and how that plays into playing left field. Also, a benefit of being here in the fall as opposed to not being here in the
Yeah.
fall. Really being able to keep their feet underneath them in the fall and learn. So that's been intentional. Where we've had guys in scrimmage situations at their positions as much as we can throughout the course of practice and on weekends. And then TJ moving to center field is more than natural. He played center field throughout his high school career. Um, it would be fun to watch him and Parker and Cora Hayes race.
Yes, it would.
It would be a dead heat. I would anticipate between those three, at the finish line. So that's a luxury for us. Is TJ is a legitimate 6'5" runner. And so to have him in center field, to be able to make the play in the gaps on the backside, right? Especially with a little bit shorter left field, even with the wind blowing out, gives us the ability to flex who we put in left field
Yeah.
and not have to have that as a defensive first position all the time. Now, all of the guys that are going to be out there. At the corners are going to be able to play defense extremely well, but we'll have the luxury, right, of positioning them a little bit differently based off of who we have in center field. So not much will change, with TJ out there, and I think he'll be great in terms of helping to direct our outfield on a daily basis. Um, and he did the same thing, throughout his high school career at West Seattle when they won the state championship. He played center field for them, and they had Division One commit at the corner. So that's I think that's a testament to TJ with how consistent he is with his game, and it's crazy to think that he's just a sophomore. With
It is.
how advanced he is in certain elements of his game, with his tools. That's the fun part is like he's just scratching the surface with a lot of it, which is really exciting. And I think as he continues to spend more time in center field throughout this spring, we're gonna go get the baseball this year in the outfield.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna wrap up really quickly here, BK. We got a couple of just rapid fires for you to
Okay.
to get out there. So, okay. Favorite favorite type of music And if you don't want to pick a favorite type, what's the one that comes on in BP that you just loathe?
Oh boy, this is a good question. Favorite type of music? Um, Definitely like old school Motown for me, I think is a always a good go-to favorite. I'm not sure if that works in BP all the time. Uh,
No.
uh, so anything that is a little bit more up tempo on BP, I think is great. We often put on some, mashup type remixes, country type mashups, to make sure that we're able to establish some rhythm with what we're doing out there. So there's no BP music that we really loathe, I would say.
Okay.
As long as there's music going, we're good. We're
Okay.
good.
Well, then I'm putting you on the spot, and I'm going to follow it with this. Then who who is not allowed to have control of music, either at the field, in the cages? Like who's just banned? Like just
Who is not?
who's got no feel for what they need to be playing?
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. Halen usually plays all the music for us.
Okay.
So it's it's pretty set out here. The players, they understand the parameters of what they need to do for the music and we let them run it. So I think we've got a pretty good system. Um, you know, uh, I'm not sure what lifting mixes JP has, if they would fit out here, but we'll see. Maybe we can try it someday.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, this is what I hope to get a lot of people's answers on. So we'll see if there's a consensus that we come to over the course of the season. Any pregame rituals or superstitions?
Pre-game rituals or superstitions? Well, just from growing up around coaches who had been in different aspects of the game, I feel very fortunate again that I had great mentors. A lot of them are old school, and you see this on game days, like
Mhm. Yep.
donuts and coffee in the clubhouse. Like that. I wouldn't say that's a ritual, but that's just standard. Like that's
Yeah.
just how it kind of always has been.
Yep.
Uh, I'm not sure if that happens everywhere, but that's just kind of what we do. So
Yep.
yeah, that type of stuff is always is great. Like you know where you're at, it's the start of the weekend, right? Even if it's a
Yep.
bit colder out, you can get coffee. Like that's
Mhm.
I think that's a part of baseball.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And if I haven't said it lately, it's greatly appreciated. So thank you for that too. Uh,
Absolutely.
uh, Favorite place to go eat a bite in town?
Oh man, there's so many great places in town now.
There
So
is.
many great places.
That's why we're putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
Or if you
God,
don't want, and
you
I'll
know,
give you an out if you don't want to name a favorite place, like favorite meal or like favorite thing you like to go get somewhere.
it's so I'll say that like Mexican food here in town is great.
Yeah, it is.
So, any of our taquerias, any of the local spots, from Mi Pueblito to Dora's to Grandma's Kitchen, right? Like that's you can't go wrong. Can't go wrong at any of those spots for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, funniest player you've ever coached.
Oh boy, funniest player that I've ever coached. That is a really hard one. Um, we have some guys with some great senses of humor. Think about our current team, Carl, Molan Kovac, extremely dry sense of humor. If you didn't know him, right, it'd be hard to know if he's joking or not.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, that our guys have a good time together. They really do. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
they do.
I think funny can be relative too, depending on the situation, right? I think we have some guys
Yeah,
who are pretty comfortable in certain settings with their humor, I would say, in a great way. Like they're not afraid if they're mentoring at recess, right, to mix it up with the elementary school kids or when we're doing PE. But at the same time, they're also, they know how to poke the bear a little bit with each other as well too. And sometimes that leads to some pretty funny conversations.
I can. Well, yeah, I have a sense. So, yeah, absolutely. Well, Brian, unless you've got anything else left that you want to say for us or let folks know as we head into the start of 2026?
Well, thank you guys for doing this. First of all, I think this is great to launch this podcast, and excited to continue to help support you all with this, and see how we can get our players and coaching staff and alumni involved as well. And really just thank all of our supporters and fans of Whitman baseball, everyone on campus for their support of our student athletes. It's been tremendous throughout my time here, and we only expect to continue to be the best that we can be, and represent Whitman to the best of our ability. So, looking forward to a great spring ahead. And we've got great kids. We have great young men in our program, who understand the bigger picture outside of baseball, and they want to be great on the field, which is fun. That's what makes it exciting, every single day at practice or when we have an opportunity to go and compete, play someone else in a different jersey. They understand that, that's a privilege, in terms of how fast time flies. And I keep telling them, like, I'm a good example of that, right? Like 20 years flies by. So, yeah. So thank you guys for all you do. And, we're excited to get the season started here in about a week.
Yep. Well, we certainly are too. Definitely chomping at the bit to get back into the friendly confines of Borleski Stadium and watch the Blues take the field. So, Brian, greatly appreciated. Enjoyed chatting with you, and we'll definitely be doing a lot more of it here in the coming weeks and months.
Great. Thank you, Steve-O.
Again, a big thanks to Whitman baseball head coach Brian Kitamura for hopping in and joining me for a conversation as we, again, just kind of covered everything. And, it was fun to get to talk to BK a little bit about himself as a student athlete. It just again, I think we've seen sort of what has changed for Whitman and Whitman Athletics in the last 10 years. Obviously, I have intimate knowledge of a lot of that, but, from his perspective of even a little bit further back, another 10, 12 years further back than I had, of just really like how much has changed since the advent of the W Club and everything else. And, try and get him out of his comfort zone to talk about that. Cause Brian doesn't talk about himself. I will give him credit in that. Like does not spend much time talking about himself in relation to everything. It's far more, he wants to talk about the program, the team, the guys, and so to make him answer some questions and have to talk about himself as a player and stuff was kind of fun.
Well, and you and I can visually see it on camp or on site here. I mean, we're sitting in one of them that got, because of, like you said, the W Club was able to come to fruition. This clubhouse dedicated just less than 2 years ago. Just next door to it is the hitting facility, which was right before you and I both got to wall of that coming in. Like just the visual stuff that's changed, since he's been a student here.
I couldn't believe he was talking about, just again, talking about they didn't have dugouts when he was first a player here. It's crazy.
And you can't say enough about what he's done for the program. I mean, you mentioned it in 24, coming off of the first Northwest Conference title for this program. I believe we looked it up. It was somewhere around the 1950s.
1952.
Yeah, so it's, that is an achievement itself. And we know the season did not end the way that the program wanted to that year, but it's just the monumental rise and climb. You just really can't say enough about what he's been able to do here. It's a testament to his dedication and everything he's been able to do for this program.
Well, and bluntly, and I didn't want to beat up on Brian on this, but like prior to really him taking the helm of this program, not only have we seen it in terms of hitting facility and clubhouse and dugouts and, obviously a lot of that with the suites coming to town too, but bluntly, they weren't very good. I'm not saying that out loud too loudly.
Is that a mic check?
Yeah, that's a mic check. But if anyone wants to go take a look at the year-by-year results, it was some tough sledding.
Yes.
So, to see them not only take the ascension in terms of the institution taking athletics and baseball more seriously with the investment in time and money, but then it also is the athletes and recruiting the athlete that can succeed here. Mm-hmm. And I think that he deserves a lot of credit in that, even if he won't take it, in terms of getting the right players in here that are athletically gifted enough to be at Whitman and compete in the top half of the Northwest Conference, as well as being able to succeed and thrive here academically.
Absolutely.
I do think that that's he deserves a lot of credit for that.
For sure. So,
but so all of that to be said, and then kind of jumping back into our conversation of sort of previewing 2026, and we get to the arms. And we talked about a few of them in there, but so in terms of the returners, Russell Peterson is really the one that headlines that list. The first team Northwest Conference All Selection. He'll be heading now into time runs. Is this his junior year or senior year?
His junior year.
So junior year, spent this last year, and it started a little rough for us, but he really settled down and became exactly who we sort of expected him to be in year 2. Overall in 2025, and then this summer went off to play baseball for the Bethesda Big Train, collegiate summer ball in Cal Ripken Senior Collegiate League, and took the ball in game 1 of the league championship series, and had put out just an outstanding summer. Has spent a lot of time working on velos. I believe last conversation I saw is 88-92 is where he's sitting right now, and no question about it, a lot of this team's success will ride on the right arm of Russell Peterson.
No, you mentioned it. Last year, the numbers, I think, are not, totally fair. Like you said, got off to the rough start, but kind of found his groove once the end of March and April hit. But he's going to be your guy taking it game 1 on that first day on Saturday. But right behind him, too, obviously, is Oliver Brown, who we'll get to. But, going back to Russ, on that 24 team that we mentioned that, won the conference and hosted the Northwest Conference tournament, he was one of those first couple guys out of the pen, if they needed to go to it, after those, those arms that they had there, those big 3 of Julian, Mateus, and that's going to escape me now. But Russ was the first one out of the pen, and, as a first year was, relied on in some key situations. So that helped him, that's a big jump to go from coming out of the pen to you're expected to be, that guy on the first or second game on the Saturday. So now with that experience behind him, the good summer league that he had this past summer, I think he's primed for a very good year this year. And then, a little bit more confidence coming out of that summer year, but also I think he kind of knows where he's at. He knows what he can do. You said he's working on the velo program and everything. So I expect a good jump from Russ this year as well, just to kind of be that, that guy that the team knows when they go out there, they got a chance to win that game because he's going to give you about 5 to 7 innings of good quality work. And then you look, who's probably going to be your number 2 returner, Ollie Brown, who came in the transfer portal last year,
Yep,
I believe from Holy Cross, and very solid as well. Kind of had a little bumpy road towards the end of the year. The ERA got a little inflated, but I think kind of like Russ, he's settled now, coming back for that second year. He's been through the program. I think this is like a good 1-2 punch for that Saturday doubleheader that these guys will be playing. And that's just really going to help, a young offense that's looking to find its way. And then obviously when we go and talk about new guys that are going to contribute, who is going to be that Sunday starter, who's going to be that game 3 starter to, if it's the rubber match or if we're going to, looking for a sweeper, state or make sure we're not getting swept. So I think that's the next key part in it, is knowing who's going to be that guy. And then you look to the bullpen, which, this was a question you and I, both on air and in the post games, were always mentioning what is the bullpen going to get you, or who is going to be that guy that stepped up. And last year, I don't really think we ever found that guy where it's like, okay, he's coming in, he's going to be able to, slam the door shut and, be that hold piece or get it to the closer. So we'll be really interested to see who's coming on this year to, do we get a step up, from a Tater Coddington? Do we get a step up from an Isaiah Granado? Just some young names that we saw thrown out there in key situations. What does that look like? So I'll be really interested to see, what are those new guys coming in, any guys from the portal or any guys that we're expecting, that Coach Kittamura and staff are expecting to step up and have good years.
Yeah, most definitely. And to sort of touch on Ollie again really quickly here too. Ollie coming to Whitman and really starting to experience for the first time just health. And that can't be overstated when it talks about just that your ability of impact. You hear about it all the time at the big league level, but just especially just heading into an off season healthy, where it's just like I'm not spending my time getting healthy. I actually get to spend some time getting better. And having an opportunity now this off season and a full healthy fall and a full, just like the difference that makes and actually being able to work on things and improve your abilities and do all of the rest when you're not just rehabbing, it makes a huge difference for these guys. So I'm with you, and I'm really excited to kind of see what sort of year that Ollie can put together here in 2026 for the Blues. And then so kind of jumping off too for a couple of the arms that Brian had mentioned in our conversation. So the first one, Jack Finn. So Jack, southpaw, he's from Alaska. Went and committed and spent his first 2 college years at Illinois State University in the middle of the country. And then actually spent 3 seasons pitching in Victoria in the West Coast League. So pitching for the Victoria Harbor Cats. So but all in all, even if you include his time in Victoria, basically as a college pitcher, Jack has 42 innings basically in the last 3 seasons, so between summer and college ball. And so there ought to be an opportunity for, again, a young man, an ability to stay healthy, and that leads to, an arm with very low mileage on it as an upperclassman now that you can hope can really step in and be a major contributor from day one.
Absolutely. You need in today's day and age of baseball, you need as many arms as you can find just to be able to get you through the weekend series and a long season. So, no, any contributors that are able to step up and come in is going to be a welcomed one for sure. Very
much so. And then so Jack being one of them, and then the other one that the Coach Kitamura had sort of mentioned in his conversation of Luke Ivanov. Being the other one, again, another transfer into this program. And, funny enough, too, to see the guys coming in from Alaska and Canada, the 2 arms that mentioned, not necessarily the places that you think of guys when you think of baseball necessarily, but, just incredibly smart guys and going to have an opportunity to really contribute right away with, again, the lefty and the righty in this overall conversation. So it should be a fun one. We're certainly looking forward to it. So Luke transferring in from Sonoma State University. So he was at Sonoma State a year ago. And so after having an opportunity to contribute and go to that school, has now come in and is going to pitch for Whitman. He threw 18 in the 3rd innings last year, ended up 0-4 with a 9.82 ERA. But again, when you're talking about the sample size that we are, hard to take some of those numbers with a too large grain of salt, so to speak. But certainly we're looking forward to seeing the opportunities that both Luke and oh my gosh, and mind is not working on a Monday.
Luke and Jack,
thank you. Jack and Luke to join in with Russ and Oliver and potentially have real chance to be meaningful arms here in 2026.
We're still learning this. We're still learning the roster, and I'm sure we're kind of like the coaches, still learning to see like who's going to be, who's going to be serviceable out of the bullpen, who's going to be that 3rd guy. So I think it's just kind of a theme that you'll see on the pitching staff a little bit, especially on the back half. So it'll be interesting to see who's able to come out of it. And I'm sure the coaches are just as excited too, because it's, that first game is just around the corner here later this month.
Yeah, not only later this month, later this week, as the team will open up on the road at Warner Pacific University this Friday. And so a chance to mention maybe one more newcomer to this program, but I'm cheating a little bit here because it's while he's new to the program, the name is not going to be necessarily a new one to Blues fans that have been around for a while. This young man had committed to college and initially was down in San Diego having committed, but his brother Garrett Runyon played here. Landon Runyon has now made his way to Walla Walla and to Whitman and is going to be putting on the Blues uniform, following in the footsteps of his brother, the all-time RBI leader in the history of Whitman baseball, Garrett Runyon. And I do remember Garrett towards the end of his career talking about how the conversation was that Landon was the more talented one. So excited to see what Landon might have an opportunity to do here in a Blues uniform.
No, I've been able to talk with Coach Kimmer a little bit about him as well, and they're very excited to bring Landon in, and you're hoping that at least the familiarity's there with his brother being here and knowing a little bit about the program. But one to look out that they'll probably be plugging into the outfield on a routine basis and expected to contribute right away. Like you said, already some playing experience at the D1 level and a little bit lower too. So that should help at least get the offense a little bit more solidified and some positions nailed down as well.
Yeah, most definitely. So, and again, there are plenty of new guys to this team as well as the returners, and we're going to be spending our year both on the weekends in the press box as well as through this podcast and this new project with you, talking about all these guys. Hopefully to have a handful of them on with us over the course of the season. But those are sort of just some of the ones that we wanted to highlight for those new to the program, and sort of as we gear up and get ourselves ready for 2026. This podcast is, again, a new adventure, and we're certainly excited about it, Cody, but we also want to hear from folks too. Like, that's going to be, I think, a big thing for us here in 2026, so if you want to be able to email us, you can send in thoughts, comments, suggestions, questions for us, questions you want us to be asking players, questions you want us to be asking coaches. Is there anything that we can get in? Go ahead and email. It's whitmanathletics@gmail.com is where you can send in all of those things, as well as something that Cody and I have done sort of on our own over the last few years, but we're going to let the stout and loyal followers in kind of on our secret a little bit, is Cody and I like to challenge each other a little bit, and would you say we're maybe slightly competitive, Cody?
It definitely
just a smidge.
it definitely comes up, and certainly when it's a specific theme of the words we're trying to get. I know for sure there's been some where you've definitely taken me to the cleaners on your knowledge a little bit more, but yes, the word submission just throughout the doubleheader as well, just words that you can put into the broadcast as well. Depending on what's happening that week, some theme, some themes and everything going on there too.
I know it's okay to be choked up about it.
I know,
we
I'm
like
getting
to have fun
about it.
But so we do, and sort of take an inspiration from one of the podcasts that I like to listen to and have followed for a really long time, is the Dan Levitard show with Stu Gatz, and they would have some friends in the industry on, and that they would have the audience give them words to sneak into the broadcast. And so we've sort of kept that spirit alive and well for us, and so we'll compile a list of words from friends and family and stuff in the past that have given us words to put into a broadcast. We keep them appropriate, we always have. But so we're going to let everyone else in on the fun. So if you have words that you want to hear us say over the course of a weekend when we're broadcasting home games, we encourage you to send them into, again, whitmanathletics@gmail.com, and little sorts of Easter eggs throughout a weekend, because especially on a 4-game home weekend, we're going to have a few of those this year. George Fox, I believe Puget Sound as well, where we're going to be playing 4 games, so back-to-back days of double headers. It's a lot of talking, and so for us, we like to kind of compete and have our opportunity to sort of to keep it fun and interesting for not only the fans listening at home, but for us as well. So we're excited for it, and so this thought be a fun new little way. So if anyone has words that they want us to slip into the broadcast too, that they can try and listen for throughout the weekend, that would be certainly fun as well. So I think that those are sort of the things we wanted to get off the ground here today. Cody, is there anything else you wanted to mention we haven't yet?
I think we covered everything. There's be certain more components coming. We'll, like you said, we're going to be talking with the players, the coaches, getting some more insight, and hopefully get a little more background on who your Whitman Blues are. Some of their backgrounds, where they're coming from. How long they've been here, some of the stuff they like about the conference, the school and everything. So, and then we'll of course review the week that was or that is upcoming, just as a little recap as well. So plenty and more of that to come. But I believe the last couple of things, especially relevant to right now, is we're just coming off one of them. Obviously, we are recording the day after the Super Bowl, and
the big game.
Yes, the big game. Correct. So
we don't need any NFL coming after us for this one.
I actually had to explain that to my staff this week when we did our graphic for it. It's like we can't promote anything that just says the Super Bowl. We can say good luck about it though. So again, NFL, we're not promoting anything. We don't want the podcast struck down before it even airs. So
exactly.
But going back to the Super Bowl, obviously a big win for the Seahawks. Congrats to all the Seahawks fans. Obviously in the Pacific Northwest, they have a big stranglehold on this area. And
stranglehold's a funny word for that.
just based on the Super Bowl parties that I was observant of, very dedicated fans, but super happy for them. Second Super Bowl in 12 years. I believe this is their 4th appearance in the last 20. So just a shout out to that organization. The front office done a great job from ownership, and that defense is smothering. It is intimidating. It's fierce. They got their new coach in as well, defensive minded, and I think you saw that come across throughout the entirety of the game. I think you and I were mentioning a little bit, but Sam Darnold, who overcame a lot from when he was coming out of college, didn't have that great first stint with the Jets. We saw a little bit of a blip last year with the Vikings, but now able to come over to Seattle and showcase that there's something there, and you could have your franchise quarterback there. But for going back to the defense quick, they had Drake May, to steal a quote from Sam Darnold, feel like he was seeing ghosts.
Yeah, and only we knew they weren't ghosts. They were very real because they were in his face the entire night. It was a boring game, for
the non-Seahawks fans.
For which you and I both fall into that one. I'm happy for Seahawks fans. My house is a happier house with the Seahawks having won. As a Broncos fan, my team should have been there, but
that's a conversation for another day.
Them's the breaks, I suppose.
Hey, that's better than what my franchise that I follow does, so we'll just leave it at that. But again, congrats against the Seahawks. I'm sure they'll be looking for repeat next year as well, and the foundation is certainly there, both offensively and defensively. But I think more relevant to what we're talking about here, World Baseball Classic, Stephen, 3 weeks away.
It's crazy to think. I mean, this with the Winter Olympics going on and the World Baseball Classic, there's a lot happening in sports for this time of year. Which usually you kind of get that Super Bowl or big game hangover, where that game ends and then there's sort of this lull. We're excited that pitchers and catchers are reporting. We're excited that spring training is around the corner. But between having the World Baseball Classic coming up, you have the Olympics rolling now, like sports doesn't die this time of year, and admittedly too, and also from my perspective, I'm also fully wrapped up. I've got you wrapped up, and we've got Whitman women's basketball still trying to compete to host and be the Northwest Conference champ on the women's basketball side. So, man, there's a lot of baseball coming up, but just a lot of sports happening in general this time of year that we're not necessarily always used to.
No, it's good, and obviously the World Baseball Classic every 3 years, and like you mentioned, the Olympics as well. So it's a good for the quote-unquote dead time between now and March Madness or early April. But a very cool tournament that's coming up for those who remember the 23 edition, that Japan-USA Classic finish there, where you had arguably the best player in the world facing probably the second best player in the world to finish out a World or Baseball Classic championship for Japan. So they are the returning champs. But again, starts March 5th, where we have our first game against Chinese Taipei in Australia. But really just a full, roughly about a 3-week tournament. And it's going to go on the same time as spring training. So there's that aspect as well. But I just, not to deviate too far, but then, later this summer we have the World Cup coming up. This is the baseball version of this. It's just to watch it on TV and just the fan experience and, all the fans coming to the different venues and just the atmosphere. It's like every game felt important. And I think that's the coolest part of it too. And just also cool is seeing the players get involved and get excited about it. I remember seeing the quotes coming out from some of the players on their teams where this is the most fun they've had playing, since their high school or college days, or just the energy came back for them.
Yeah. So
I'm excited to see that part of it too. And I mean, we can get into who we think might have a good chance of it, but I think, that's what I'm looking forward to it the most of.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. When the World Baseball Classic first started, 15 years ago now, something like that.
I believe 2007, something like that.
So even maybe a little bit more, almost 20. There was a lot of sort of back and forth about what form it would take and whether it would hold on, whether it would catch on. We are now far enough removed from it that the guys that are getting into the big leagues now, like this is one of those things you want to do as part of your career, right? Like you lost baseball to the Olympics. It's no longer part of the Summer Olympics. Like this is the international baseball competition available. And so anyone that grew up playing the game, watching the game, anything else, like this is it. And so it is a big deal. We saw it the last time. I mean, Miami gets a bad rap as being maybe not the best fan base or best group for baseball when it comes to the Marlins support. That park was on fire.
It was a certified party every game.
Awesome. And so, like, they're going back to Lone Depot Park. I'm super excited to see that for the World Baseball Classic again here in 2026. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like, anyone that hasn't in some time gone and actually watched the World Baseball Classic, tune in this year. It should be a good time.
And, I mean, like I said, the fan experience alone, I mean, we can talk about the favorites coming up, but a lot of these countries have a very rich history of baseball, or a very, proud tradition of baseball. And you see it reflected on the major league rosters, and you're going to see a lot of those top players playing for these countries. And I like how Major League Baseball and the World Baseball Classic, they've been a big deal about releasing, who's signed up to be on Team USA, who's going to be on Team Dominican Republic, who's going to be on Team Puerto Rico, who's going to be on the Colombian team, Brazil, all those. Like, MLB is super represented by all these countries, and I'm just very excited to see that they've played into that and are announcing these rosters, making it a really, really big thing. But, obviously the USA team, there's a lot of talent there. They're one of the favorites.
Stacked.
The USA team, especially being able to get the players committed, as early as they did and signed on for it. And that's what the fans want to see. They want to see the best of the best going up against the best of the best. So, Japan, like we said, a lot of talent there. Anytime you have Shohei Ohtani on your team, you're more than likely going to be favored to win a lot of games. Just look at the LA Dodgers. So they should be, very favorable to perform well. Dominican Republic, always super deep, talented wise. You look at that starting lineup, you could probably name, I think it's like 8 of the 9 position guys are former All-Stars, or, a couple of them are multi-MVP winners as well. So they're going to be at the top as always. One team, unfortunately, that you and I were talking about off air that, lost a couple, the Puerto Rico situation, they're usually always in it, but due to some insurance things, they won't have some of their top guys. But, you look at a team like Mexico that, arguably has the best left fielder in baseball on their team, and Jaron Duran, going to be on their team. Randy Rosarena, another standout guy as well. So there is a lot of, talent, a lot of star, players in these matchups that the fans can really get behind. I didn't even mention, South Korea, who is usually in the Final Four or the championship game as well. And we know their rich baseball history as well. So I'm really excited just to see it, that going on, plus spring training. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sure is. It's going to be a ton of fun. We're excited to see it. Anybody looking at rosters, USA and Japan in some sort of rematch feels highly likely at this point, especially given the fact that you do have some challenges with some guys not getting to play. Francisco Lindor not getting an opportunity to play as a result of insurance. Just silliness that I hope that they take care of before they get to the next one. But it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, that USA roster is stacked this year.
Well, we'll be following along as we do this weekly podcast as well. I'm sure we'll have some score updates, some standing updates as well, and we might be streaming a game or two while we're recording these as well, just to keep an eye on things. But should be a great month of March, and I hope everyone's able to at least catch a game or two and tune in, is possible. It's a fun time.
It sure is. And so Cody, we've had some fun here, and we'll look forward to having a whole heck of a lot more of it this entire season when we get up and rolling. And again, the Blues on the road at Warner Pacific University this weekend. That'll be followed by a trip to Southern California to take on Redlands and Pomona Pitzer. And then the next time after that we talk about the Blues will be at home at Borleski Stadium as they open Northwest Conference play against George Fox University. So baseball in February is real. It's a thing. And we got baseball in March not too far away either. But we've got a lot coming up. We're looking forward to a lot of what we have planned, a lot of the things that we're going to do, as well as to just finally get into the games.
Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it.
So again, this has been the Whitman Baseball Diamond Report, episode 1 for us, and one of many is certainly the plan. So again, appreciate you tuning in. Stay with us. Look for updates. Email us, whitmanathletics@gmail.com, and we look forward to hearing from and seeing hearing from everyone through the email, and then hopefully eventually seeing everyone out at Borleski.